Well, hi, everyone. Ben and I are here tonight with our special guest, Sarah Chumacero, and we're talking about one of her books, which is Stuff Paranormal Investigators Need to Know. So welcome, Sarah.
Hi, how are you guys?
Welcome.
We're great. Thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate that. I love our chats because it's always so broad.
Yeah, I always walk away thinking that we could talk for hours, so I'm always happy to come back.
Yeah, great.
An hour's not long enough.
Exactly.
But anyway, for those who are watching, Sarah's written a reference guide for paranormal enthusiasts that delves into the psychology behind visual and auditory phenomenon, such as pareidolia, optical illusions, and how our brain processes information. And it's called Stuff Paranormal Investigators Need to Know, Volume 1. So I guess basically you're saying in your book, and I've had a sneak peek of it, what I could inside the cover on Amazon today, is basically, wait a minute, you need to know this first before you conclude that the strange shaped haze that you saw on the road in front of you may actually be a mist due to atmospheric conditions and not a ghost rider on a horse or something like that.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I think a lot of people kind of know the basics of what we call pareidolia, where you kind of see like an elephant in the clouds and things like that. So it goes a bit further than that and kind of explains why our brain actually works that way. And I try to draw on my own experiences that I have had out when I have done paranormal investigations, so that people that are reading it can kind of relate. And so I may talk about an experience that I've had somewhere where I thought that this was happened, but then after further investigation, I found that it was actually this, and this. So it sort of like goes through different things that our mind can trick us into thinking. It looks at different medical conditions, even our atmospheric conditions around us, and even down to simple things like it could just be a possum, it could just be a bat, all those things that you may not think of at the time. So it's just sort of arming people with a lot of information, because once you can kind of eliminate all the really trivial things, if you can eliminate all of those and you've still got something really interesting, I think that it's definitely then worth pursuing.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Go on, Ben, sorry.
I was just going to say that with pareidolia, I think that the biggest place where it causes everybody the most problems is in photographs and video. You know, like in a real-time sensory way, yes, I can see it in its role there as well. But for all the time I've been doing investigations, the number of photographs that I've seen that simply are people seeing patterns within smoke or, you know, and dusts for orbs and that sort of thing like that. And I think that is probably the biggest, well, to me, that's probably one of the biggest things around what people perceive pareidolia as being.
Yeah, absolutely. And you only have to look at, I mean, there's so many different groups on Facebook where people say, oh, post your experiences and things like that. And the majority of the things posted in those groups are those kind of photos. Someone was at home and said, oh, I felt a bit like I was being watched and I've snapped this photo. Can you see the face here sort of looking out of my wardrobe and things like that. So, and the hard part is a lot of the time people aren't going to listen to you because they're so attached to the experience and what it means to them that they don't want it to be anything else.
Yes.
So it's I guess it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, and I have found that out, but there are a lot of people that are out there willing to learn and willing to kind of say, well, okay, yeah, it might not be paranormal and this is why. So, and that's sort of what the book caters to. It's to those people that have that open mind, that really want to get to the bottom of things.
Right. Okay. So now the description of your book says it takes a rational approach to paranormal investigating, offering natural explanations for common paranormal phenomena while exploring spiritual and other possibilities, which is basically, you know, you've said something along those lines. And that description infers that you think people can often behave, as you've just said, irrationally when it comes to the paranormal. What do you think the drivers are for that sort of irrational behaviour? Let's drill down into this, Sarah. Let's get to the bottom of it.
Look, it's one of those things I am quite fascinated with. And I think it really comes down to that emotional connection. And a lot of it can be that a person, for whatever reason, really needs it to be paranormal. So there are some people that they think it is a message from the other side from a particular person that's passed. And in that case, perhaps they haven't really gone through the grieving process properly, or that there might be some unfinished business there, and that they really desperately need to see or feel that that person is around. And I think that grief is probably one of the number one reasons. And I have done a lot of research into sort of grief, and they have things called grief hallucinations and all those kind of things. And there are psychologists that actually believe that people that actually feel that they are being visited, I guess, by the spirit of the person that they're grieving is actually a part of their grieving process, and that some people, just by being able to talk to them as if that they were there, is actually part of that healing process for them. So I do think that that plays definitely a certain part to it. But I think another part as well is you only have to look at, particularly now, all the things that are on YouTube, the paranormal reality shows, and there are a lot of social media pages that really, they just want to get likes, they want to get clicks. And so they'll put up photos, and a lot of them I know, they know are fake, but they want to get engagement and they want to get more visitors to the page. So they'll put something up and they don't really care if it's paranormal or not. They want the clicks. And that's also a big problem too.
Yeah, same in the UFO research field as well. I lost my train of thought right there.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Because it becomes really easy for people to think, oh, well, I can have a paranormal experience, you know. And the classic one is when the photograph is taken and nothing is seen at the time, you know, and that always bothers me a lot. You know, and I know it's possible that, yes, surely things can appear that we can't sense, but for all the photographs that get taken out there and put up and say, well, I saw nothing was seen when we took this picture, but there's that object in the sky, there's that face in the smoke. You sort of go, well, it just makes it so easy for anybody out there to get confused, I think.
Yeah. I think part of it too is people just want that validation as well. So they may have been experiencing something at the time, and maybe they just want that kind of visual confirmation that what they have experienced did actually happen, and they feel that, oh, that's my proof that it did actually happen. And you kind of go looking for something that's not even there in the photo, but that's your way of saying, well, yes, that proves that what I was feeling was actually paranormal.
Yes. Yeah, I had a guy who was sending me photos. He'd go out into the bush and he'd take photos, and then he'd just start circling all these things in the photos. You know,
red circles.
Yeah, red circles. These red circles in the photos, and I received like a huge volume of them. You know, not just one photo. It was just they kept coming and coming, and I thought to myself, there is just any number of faces you can see in a gum tree when you take a picture of a gum tree.
Yeah, that is 100% right.
You can't, it's hard to take it any further.
And once seen, it's hard to unsee, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah,
especially
exactly.
when you say it's right there. It's that power of suggestion. And once you say to someone, look, that's it there, and you're outlining it with that circle, you're going to see it and you can't unsee it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I'm usually a silent observer when it comes to these groups, like the ones that I am in, and I rarely engage at all, because I like watching what people do on the pages, you know, and you get the people who put the picture up, and then the haters appear, you know. So, you know, you do get the people who say, no, mate, that's not right. That's, you know, that's just da, 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 da. And then you'll get the supporters, the ones who are going, oh yeah, that's definitely an orb. And, you know, and there's just not enough information beyond a pic post, really. And from an investigative point of view, there's so much more information you need.
Yeah. There's a huge psychological component to it. I mean, ever since I got involved in the UFO field, let alone the paranormal field in recent years, I see exactly what you're saying, Sarah, that there's this, besides all the clickbait and the likes for the posts and the follows, etc., there's this real deep need for people to want to for these things to be real and for them to project these things in their own psyche onto into the outer world. And I think too, when things get hard in life, people tend to project those things as well, probably a bit more. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely do. And I am not someone that works with people. There's a lot of people out there that work on what they call private cases, and they'll help people that feel they have things going on in their home. But from the people that I have spoken to that do that, it's always much more beyond that. And a lot of the time people are in a lot of emotional distress. Sometimes they find there's a lot of clutter around the house and things like that. So there's a lot more psychologically going on than just a person randomly starting to experience something paranormal at home.
Yeah. I guess when you start delving into what we know about the human mind, it makes us question just what it is really capable of when it comes to paranormal phenomena. Given what you know now, has there been a personal experience that you changed your mind about and now consider that event to be a result of some sort of natural response?
I would say probably maybe 99% of the things that I've experienced, I look back and question. And even sort of the few small ones, I have doubt there. And I don't think that they'll ever be, I know that there are some people out there that they just know within themselves, or they'll know intuitively, or they're 100% sure that what they experienced was something more. I can't say without a shadow of a doubt that something was paranormal. And sometimes people try to pin me down and say, what did you think of this? And I'll just say, I don't think I would ever say something was 100% paranormal, because there's always that possibility of our mind. And I actually saw someone write something on social media the other day who basically just said reality is sort of unique to each person, and everyone has their own reality, and that's sort of it. And it's sort of, we all have our different thoughts and beliefs, and it's sort of, what is reality? You know, it's a really, really hard one.
Yeah, it's a big subject, isn't it?
Yeah, and it just, the more that I've kind of studied psychology, and I mean, I haven't like studied psychology at university or anything like that, but I've read a lot of research papers and things like that of people that have actually done studies and research into psychology versus paranormal investigation. And there always is an explanation, I guess, for something. And so that always makes it difficult to pinpoint how do you know what is real, what is not? It's really difficult. So at the end of the day, you do, I guess, have to just sort of trust on what you feel within yourself.
Interesting though. I was just going to say that you also mentioned too that there are certain medical conditions and physical responses to our natural surroundings that often make us feel we're experiencing something paranormal. Can you sort of expand on that?
Yeah, so there's particularly depending on the medical condition. So one of the ones that comes straight to my mind is what's called, I'm just going to get the pronunciation correct. I have the book here. It is.
Oh, it's handy to have your own book there.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Which is Charles Bonnet syndrome, which is basically a form of visual loss. And it actually ends up where people, they have sort of a blackness within their vision, and it actually causes them to see figures. And there's actually medical studies that actually say that one of the, I guess, side effects of this is that people actually will see figures of people standing in their house and they're not actually there, and it's a direct result of this kind of medical condition. And there's sort of similar things that can happen as well when people have different degrees of hearing loss and tinnitus and things like that. It does things to the human ear. And I know I suffer from tinnitus sometimes. And a perfect example I can give is I'd been at a concert all night and I'd been next to a speaker. And so I came home and my ears were absolutely ringing like crazy. And then I was lying in bed. And then all of a sudden, like through the ringing, it felt like I was hearing voices within the actual ringing. And I knew at the time that it wasn't, and that it was caused by the ringing, but it only happens sort of when I get that tinnitus. And so that, I guess, is a perfect example of a medical thing that could make someone think, oh, well, these voices, there's someone in my room, but there's no one here. It must be a ghost, but it's actually caused by the the tinnitus.
I know that some of the dementias can cause people to hallucinate certain things. Lewy body dementia is one where people hallucinate small animals, for example.
Okay.
They don't know why.
Yeah.
Yeah. And some people can have dementia for quite a while before they're actually diagnosed too. So I'm not saying that everyone who sees that has dementia, but I agree, there are some things that can actually explain
it's an example
things.
And there is another condition, I think it's called misophonia, where sounds can make you actually really angry, and you have a physical response to certain sounds. So it's more beyond sort of if you're just sitting down and someone's eating really loud and you kind of just start feeling really annoyed. You can actually have like a real outburst. And there are times where, particularly on a paranormal investigation, where people all of a sudden will have some sort of reaction to something, and sometimes they get really, really angry and they have to be escorted from the building. And a lot of the time people will say, oh, they're being possessed by a spirit or affected by a spirit and things like that. But it could actually be something as simple as that a sound has actually set them off and they're not aware.
So many conditions can actually trigger hallucinations and things like that. So for investigators, it's so much stronger when you have multiple witnesses seeing the same thing, as opposed to one person in a house. So if you've got one person in a house who's seeing things and no one else in the house is seeing things, that's got to indicate that it's potentially a physical condition that's causing that. But if the mother and the son, and they all say, yes, I've seen it, then that makes it a stronger case.
Exactly. And I think as well, you have to kind of look at the context of the grand scheme of things as well, and not just rely on one personal experience that one person has had. It's sort of, you can't just say, oh, I've heard a weird noise one night, I'm suffering from a haunting, or I've had a paranormal experience. It kind of has to go a bit beyond that.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's almost the syndromes where groups of people can create something. So,
they have like mass hysteria sort of situations. And there was one, I can't remember which country it was in. It may have been Thailand, where there was a case of girls that all started screaming because they thought that there was a ghost or demon or something outside of the window, and they all had this one same experience. And it sort of turned out that they felt that it was a case of mass hysteria within this classroom, based on one of the urban myths surrounding a death beside a tree.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I watched a thing recently. There was I can't remember the names involved, but there was a group in the 70s where they actually created a fictitious ghost, and they started doing seances around this guy. They gave him a complete backstory and everything. And then they started to manifest these things through seances and things like that. I thought that was really interesting, that just through sheer creation of a backstory, you could actually create something that was giving the same type of returns as you would get from apparently a real spirit. So
and I mean, that was called the Philip experiment. So from 1970. I know about that quite a lot. I've done a lot of research on that one, because I have kind of argued a lot that perhaps that's what a lot of people are doing on paranormal investigations to an extent, because they're going into a location, there's already a story behind it, and they might go in and say, oh, we're looking for this spirit of Philip, and oh, we're told that Philip likes this and this, let's all concentrate on Philip and see if we can get his spirit to appear. So essentially they're doing the same kind of thing week in, week out. So sometimes I argue, are paranormal investigators actually creating their own sort of spirits, and it's not necessarily haunted by a spirit that roams the halls there. It could just be something that people are creating.
Yes.
Fascinating. And there's also, I mean, it's not so much paranormal, but there's also the phenomenon of mutual dreaming, where people who live in the same house can invade each other's dreams too, which I think is really interesting, because they get up in the morning and go, oh, I had this dream. Oh, spooky, I had the same dream. Oh, spooky, I had the same dream too. Like there's something weird going on, but actually it's a real phenomenon.
Yeah, and they call it sort of dream telepathy, where sort of people can go into each other's dreams. And I don't know a huge amount about it. I've done a little bit of research with it, and there's been sort of a few studies, and they know that it happens, but as to why or how, it's sort of one of those things that I guess like many things in the paranormal, we don't necessarily know.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think one of the things that I did read is that apparently the people tend to have sort of an emotional bond, and so that they sometimes feel that that might be the connection as to how they're able to do it, because it doesn't necessarily seem to be two strangers. But I suppose you wouldn't know either if two strangers are having the same kind of dream, because you wouldn't be talking to each other about it. So
that's true.
It's sort of a hard one, but one of the main criteria they sort of say is that people have to have sort of some kind of emotional connection.
So I guess people who share houses are mostly families. And
yeah.
that. Yeah. Now, I've spoken about this before. I had a close encounter with what has become known, like with 3 small grey aliens, where they appeared beside my bed in the wee hours of the morning back in the early 90s. And I told myself it was an hallucination for 15 years before I sort of started to explore, is that possible that it's a reality? Because a lot of other people are reporting this too, which we refer to as alien abduction experiences. And I still, from time to time, I wonder about that experience. It doesn't keep me awake at night or anything like that. But I also had an out-of-body experience that was quite profound for me, where I left my body under no duress and could see myself sitting on the front veranda of my house in broad daylight while I was separated, as clearly as I'm seeing you two now. So I know that there's a reality to some of these strange experiences from my own personal experience. My question is, in discarding certain situations like that, or like sleep paralysis or anything else, to explain them as normal events for certain individuals, is there too much scope for getting that wrong? And, can people fall through the cracks, being invalidated for having a real experience? And then what harm can that cause?
Yeah, I mean, that's 100% true, because at the end of the day, how do we know that they didn't experience, like, whatever they experienced was actually very real to that person? And so I think one thing that people forget before we say it's paranormal or it's not, it was a very real experience to that person, and in some cases it could actually be traumatic and could have a lasting mental effect. So it's something that has to be approached with caution, and just dismissing somebody and saying no, that didn't happen. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's sort of a form of gaslighting. And there are a lot of people out there that do feel completely invalidated and that they have nowhere to go because they're going through certain things and they're very real to them. So whether they are paranormal or not, it's still having that lasting effect. And I think as well, even when you talk about like your out of body experience and things like that, I compare it to a lot of when we look at a lot of the near-death experiences people have had, where they talk about where people floated up and saw their bodies, but they were actually able to give information about certain things in the room that they should not have known. And so even the staff are like, how could they possibly have known that kind of thing? So it does make me think that, there are some things out there, but again, it's how do we know which is which? And so a lot of what I am doing now, I kind of changed my approach a lot, is I'm just more now about listening to people and collecting their experiences and just, I guess, trying to see where the common patterns are. And it's not about telling a person this happened or this didn't happen, it was paranormal, it was not paranormal. It's more just about listening and collecting all the experiences, because these kind of experiences have been around for centuries. So we can't have just all been hallucinating for the last 500 years sort of thing. Like, there's got to be a reason why we all feel and experience all these things. So I guess I'm just sort of more trying now to look at the experiences themselves as more to saying, is it paranormal or not?
That's a good point. Yeah, because I mean, it's the investigator's curse, isn't it? Like, people come to you and in some ways you can almost be so hesitant to talk to them about, to go through that process of fully listening to an experience, particularly abduction scenarios and complex things like that, where it really is an extremely subjective experience that doesn't generate a lot of physical evidence. So that, even if you go to their house, there may not be much that's there, but you've got to either commit to that process and say, I'm here for the journey. I want to go through this with you from start to finish, no matter how long it takes. I'm with you, and just hear it for what it is. Or you do that unvalidation thing of going, no, well, this is not for me as an investigator, because it's not, you're not. I either think you're crazy, or I don't think you're right. I think there's other issues here. So it is that constant thing you've got to do. And I think that's a really great approach that you've got.
And one of the problems is that I have also seen in the field is a lot of paranormal investigators, I think sometimes feel like there's kind of psychologists and are quick to kind of tell someone, oh, you must have mental health problems and you need to go and see a mental health doctor and things like that. But they don't have the scope or the qualifications to actually diagnose someone like that either. And that's a really big problem too.
Yeah, that's very true.
It's a huge problem. And getting psychologists to, not a huge amount of psychologists are there for alien abduction people either. There's not a whole lot of people out there that you can go to and seek help with that. And that's like there's unqualified people happy to have a go, but qualified people sort of stand back from it still, don't they?
Yeah, I suppose that's that whole, and there is a very much a divide from people that have more academic backgrounds to what you would call amateur researchers, or what they refer to us as lay people. So there is just that divide, but there are some people out there that are open-minded, but I guess it's sort of finding them, which is the hard part.
There's more psychologists who get involved in the near-death experience field, for example. And that's always, I think it's always been like that since the 70s, in the late 70s. A couple of them formed the International Association of Near-Death Studies. So, they hit the ground running there, that was for sure. So that was great. I wish it would happen in a lot of other areas as well. But I'm just looking at your poster in the background of Houdini.
Yes.
Do spirits return? I like that poster.
I love Harry Houdini.
Yeah, I know. I read that you admire the work of Harry Houdini, and who basically debunked a lot of spiritualist parlor tricks in his time, didn't he?
He did. And the part of the book's name, it's called What the Eyes See and the Ears Hear, the Mind Believes, is a quote from Harry Houdini. And he was pivotal in the spiritualist movement in exposing a lot of fraudulent mediums. And a lot of people didn't like his arrogance, but I suppose a lot of the people that you look at are arrogant. But you kind of had to be. He was about the show, and he liked the it all being about him. He was a showman. But what I guess I liked about what he did was that he used his knowledge within magic to kind of sit and see how mediums would actually do their work. And I've read his book, A Magician Among the Spirits, which is one of my favorite books. And it goes into quite a lot of detail as to what the mediums would do back then to basically deceive people that they were getting messages from spirits. So one of the things, such as table rapping, which is where they would have a seance, people would come and they would pay a lot of money because they were desperate to hear from their loved ones. So they'd pay this medium a lot of money, and they would say, oh, if the spirit of Arthur is here, can you knock 3 times on the table? And there would be a knock on the table and people would be crying and all sorts of things. But what they didn't know was they actually would have like a device that had sort of like a piston attached to a rod that would tap on the floor or under the table and actually make those noises. So they would actually have quite a lot of intricate devices. They were quite good at using sleight of hand, which is obviously something that a magician like Harry Houdini was quite good at. And so he was able to he would go to seances in costume often, and he'd come up with all these characters, or he would have people working for him that would go as well. And so sort of sit and just observe, and then sort of towards the end, he would then expose them for what they had done in a very showmanship way. And he basically would then do presentations to the general public about, well, this is how they're doing it. So his aim was to educate people because he didn't want them to be ripped off. And he lost his mother. At some point, he was really attached with his mother, if you know the history of Harry Houdini. And he actually wanted to make contact with his mother. Like, he wanted to believe that there was life after death and that he would be able to speak to his mother again. But he just never found anyone that was able to do that for him. And so it kind of became a bit of a quest, because he had a reading done, and the information that came through was just not his mother at all. I mean, she didn't speak English, but it came through in English, and just all these little things. And so he kind of just felt like, well, people are getting ripped off here, and I have the knowledge to kind of stop that. And that's what he was about in sort of the later part of his life.
Mm-hmm. The thing about Houdini was that, he originally had a belief in the afterlife, and he retained that belief throughout his debunking, I suppose, until did he keep it till the end? Till the very
I believe till the very end. He felt that there was no evidence of it, but he had an agreement with his wife where he basically had a code, and he said, well, if there is afterlife, I'm going to come back and I'm going to deliver you this code. And that's how the Houdini yearly seances started every Halloween, was that they would be held and they would try to contact him. And supposedly he never came through. There was one medium that claimed that they did, and then they found it came through. He actually got the information from a book that was written a year earlier. So at the very end, I don't believe that he kind of kept that belief, but he was best friends at one time with Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who was obviously a very avid spiritualist, who was also the writer of Sherlock Holmes. And he unfortunately backed a lot of people that later found to be fraudulent. So he was a big believer in the Cottingley fairies. So the girls that created those photos with the fairies, he backed them quite strongly, and of course that all came out to be fake, and they had a really good friendship until it was actually Doyle's wife that read Houdini and said that she had a message from his mother, and everything that came through was sort of incorrect, and it ended up kind of breaking their relationship, and just their really strong opposing views broke their relationship. And Doyle wanted to convince Houdini not just that there was an afterlife, but he actually felt that the way that he was able to do the magic tricks that he could do, that was something sort of paranormal within itself, and that he must have had some sort of superpowers or things like that. And Houdini kind of just wanted his friend to understand, well, no, unfortunately the world is not as, you're too naive. The world is unfortunately full of deception, because deception is obviously his trade.
Yeah. Sort of sad, really.
It is a bit sad.
They never made that connection with his mother.
Yeah, and it's also sad that, and I don't think that perhaps like when Doyle's wife did the reading, I don't think that she did it as a way of being deceptive and saying, oh, I'm pretending that this is coming through. I think that she probably genuinely felt that she was coming through, but whether it was her or not, we don't know, but he certainly didn't believe that it was.
Yeah. Houdini sort of, like in the early days anyway, is that a good example of how, that drive for people to want to believe in something more than this reality. It's really powerful in some people, obviously. Some other people couldn't care less, they just don't believe it. But, it's a sort of, that drive sort of powers people to eventually get to some stage in their life to ask the big question, is this all there is? And I know that asking that question is actually the launch pad for many people to go on a spiritual journey, maybe a search for God, or certainly for something else. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I would argue that the paranormal is in some ways kind of its own sort of religion in a way, because people are not necessarily worshipping, but they're in search of this higher power and answers from this higher power. They don't know what it is. They feel that whether it's life after death or something else, and the amount of time and energy that they invest into it, and how much they just blindly believe in a lot of things. It's sort of the way a lot of people believe in different gods and things like that. It's just, it doesn't matter what anybody says, they've got that belief there, and they don't need proof because they've got that belief and they feel that connection. So there are some people, I guess, that feel that they have a connection to God, and then there are people that feel that they have a connection to the other side, and they will defend it profusely either way. And you can't tell them otherwise, because they don't need that proof. It's sort of within them.
What about you, Ben? Are you a fence sitter, or you're not really a fence sitter because you're exploring all these things with me, but have you sort of had times in your life where you've changed your mind about something?
Look, I think back when I was in my early 20s, I sort of had a look at the whole God issue. It just sort of came up for me, and from a Christianity point of view and that sort of thing. And I've never really been a churchgoer or anything like that, but I sort of did go on that quest to sort of try and find whether there was anything through a spiritual belief in a God, in a Christian sort of a framework. And for me personally, that whole framework just does not work on any level at all. And and I don't say that to offend anyone who follows that framework, but when I had my sort of more bigger awakening was when I looked at the sky. When I saw the sky at night, and I saw just how vast the universe, and we only see a very small portion of it, that opened me up to going, well, there's got to be something else out there, or my hope is that there's something else out there. It's not through the paradigms of probably really any of the world's religions, in my opinion. So then I thought, well, it's got to be something that's perhaps paranormal. Perhaps it is a paranormal thing that we're looking at here, which is UFOs, ghosts, cryptids, and all that type of thing. So that sort of really got me on that journey from quite a young age. I've been going with it through all my life, and it still evolves for me all the time in what it is. And it's like trying to grab water. It just keeps slipping through your fingers every time you sort of think you've achieved something with the paranormal. It just slips through your fingers again. And I think I've got as many question marks over my head now as what I had when I first started out. So rather than being a card carrying, staunch, believer in the paranormal, or connected to the spirit world, the alien world, anything like that, I still remain very much on the fence. But I'm happy to leap off when something presents itself in a way that I think is that I feel is real. And I think as Sarah said before, we're all living in our own realities. Everybody's reality is completely different, and we can perhaps, like through Christianity and things like that, people can find this joint connection with something that works for them and gives them comfort. That doesn't work for me, but whatever works for you is fine.
Yeah, I think that I don't know, it's a strange thing, but I think for some people, without some sort of, I think beliefs are really important for human beings, whatever they are. It seems to give us it keeps our equilibrium in balance. It keeps our worldview, going forward, perhaps. I don't know how else to say it, but there's something about it. And I know that myself, when I sort of lost connection with, let's say, spirituality, for example, which isn't really paranormal, it's just something that you feel. I actually can become physically unwell. So I think beliefs of a belief system of some description, which gives people a perceptual framework of how the world works in their worldview, I think that's really important for us to keep it together.
I think the searing reality of death is what drives this entire quest within us, because we all die. It all comes to an end. And if it's just a terrifying blackness at the end of that, I think if you can find some way to improve your journey towards the inevitability of your demise, then that helps you to live your life.
And just having hope that maybe that isn't it, that maybe that there is something beyond that, and having that kind of peace and comfort that if you believe so strongly in yourself, whether you go into the universe or whatever happens to us after we go, you've got that kind of peace with the process.
Yeah, because we don't get an instruction book. That's that's the whole thing. There's not a you've been born, here's your instruction book, and this is how it's going to go for the next 5 lifetimes. Like, you just don't get that. And that's why in some ways that's a good thing, and in some ways that's a bad thing.
It's certainly an interesting concept that there appears to be unseen dimensions, put it that way, that are possibly populated with spirits of the dead or extraterrestrials, or other intelligent forces seeming to bump into our reality. Actually, it's pretty mind-blowing, really, to think of those possibilities. But given that humans only see a short bandwidth of light between ultraviolet and infrared, or that we only hear certain frequencies that other animals can't, far exceed, or that we can only access a limited range of smells. We can't smell underwater like fish, for example. That's one thing. And I was reading something about scientists suggest the dog sense of smell is somewhere between 10,000 to 100,000 times more acute than ours. There's a whole range in our reality that we're missing out on. And we don't know what's in those other ranges. We don't understand it. So there's a lot of space for us to get things wrong.
Absolutely.
There is. And I mean, you even look at, animals know when there's a storm coming or if there's an earthquake coming and things like that, just from their reaction to feeling vibrations and things within the earth that we can't feel. And so a lot of people would, that kind of behavior is what people think of a person being psychic, because they're able to know that these things are going to happen. But I suppose when it comes to the case of the animal, they're more feeling their surroundings and things like that. So you have to wonder, why is it that some people feel things or experience things so much more deeply than others? Why do we not all experience things in the same way? You have some people that may have these experiences with spirits or extraterrestrials or whatever, but then you've got a bunch of people that don't. So it's sort of like, why? That's probably one of my biggest areas of interest. Is like, why?
Great question.
Yeah.
It's a great question. I've never got to the bottom of that myself, and I
don't think we will.
I don't think we will either. And I lament, my lack of ability in some of these areas, and then not only do I lament my lack of ability, is that comes with that's my lack of understanding, because I don't have that ability.
Yeah. And I mean, one of the simplest things, for example, is so many people talk about, I suppose, with paranormal investigation, that they've seen an apparition, which is, I guess, like a ghostly figure of a spirit. I have never seen one. And everyone asks me, and sometimes people say, perhaps you're too close-minded, or you're not open-minded enough, or that you're constantly thinking about the rational and just not letting things happen, or things like that. But I always just wonder, like, why haven't I seen it? Why has my brother seen one? Like, he'll just be walking somewhere and there's like, whoa. And, I don't see any of that. And so it kind of, I guess, like you, Ben, it just bothers me. But it's like, why? Why am I not having these same experiences as other people?
Yeah, it's unfathomable as to why not. I really feel that like I've done a lot of UFO investigation. I've done a lot of cryptid investigation. I've had UFO experiences. I've even had ghost experiences, but I've never had a cryptid experience. And I spent 2 years working hard investigating cryptids. Not a stitch of an experience. And then someone will report some massively brilliant encounter, and you just go, why not me?
Yeah, exactly.
Why do you want to?
Because I am a quester and a thirster.
Yes.
Who wants to find where the edges of our reality I want to go to that border, and I want to be there and see what's beyond it, and things like cryptid experiences, ghost encounters, and all that. That's where it all is.
Well, you and I have had a discussion about yowies before, and I've said if I saw one, I'd run the other way. And you got a 400-kilo big, brutish animal human coming towards you. No, thank you.
No, I think I'd be the same.
Yeah, pull me apart, left, right, and centre. No, thank you.
There's a reason I don't go out in the woods and investigate that.
There's a really interesting concept with that too, is because like people, I'd say yes, I'd go towards the UFO, yes, I'd go towards the yowie, and you can sit here in the comfort of your own lounge room and say that, but when you're actually out in those locations, a lot of witnesses will say that this insane and immediate fear kicks in, and it's almost like it's projected by whatever entity it is that you are encountering. It is projected, and the message is go.
Yeah.
That's the message. And I've heard so many people have had UFO encounters, cryptids encounters, where it's not fight or flight, it's just plain old flight.
Yeah. And I've seen it happen even with people on paranormal investigations, where even the toughest person that, nothing scares me is, and look, honestly, I've had it happen to me once, where there has been once, for no reason that I can explain, I was overcome with massive amounts of fear and I just could not be there anymore. And I was petrified at nothing, and I could not explain it. And it was just that go, you have to go. It wasn't, I've seen something and it's that fight or flight. It was like you said, it's just go.
You've got to go. If you want to poke the bear, you have to be prepared for the reaction.
Yeah, exactly.
That is really, really what it's about, So yeah, you just don't know how you're going to react until you're in a situation, and that's where it's important to listen to witnesses. How did you react?
Yeah.
How did you react to that man, that spectre standing in the doorway, or how did you react to the little grey man or the big hairy smelly beast? So it's just also fascinating.
And that's where I find it strange too. Like sometimes people that are on paranormal investigations, they'll just kind of stand there and go, oh, I'm being poked or I'm being touched on the arm. And they're just so very calm and matter of fact about it. And it's sort of like, but if you were really being grabbed on the arm by something that's not there, wouldn't you react differently? Wouldn't you at least be a bit scared, or just sort of like, oh, something's grabbed my arm, not just, oh, there's something touching me or there's something touching my hair.
Yeah.
That's one experience that I kind of am just like,
Yeah, I would agree with that too. Like, if someone outside of your immediate family touches, like, ooh, what are you touching me for?
Yeah, exactly.
let alone an entity.
Yeah.
Well, you certainly know if it was a yowie touching you, that's for sure. But Sarah, you mentioned in your book, having had this discussion about yowies, that evidence for yowies / Bigfoot doesn't exist. But I think a few cryptozoologists might disagree with that. How do you handle, or how do you process anecdotal reports, for example? Because I guess when you were saying that, you meant scientific evidence, hard evidence. I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
But and I'm not even sure that that's quite accurate. I'm not saying it isn't either. But how do you handle anecdotal reports of these types of things?
I suppose like anything, like I said, I'm just kind of, I collect everything, and it's admittedly that is not an area that I spend a lot of time with. But what I find, and the reason that I sort of mentioned that in the book, is because when I look at the belief system of everything, and I've done a lot of surveys with people all around the world, and what I find very intriguing is that you'll have people that will say, I believe in spirits or ghosts, I believe in aliens, but I don't believe in cryptos. And I find that absolutely fascinating as to why that they don't. But I suppose when you look at the grand scheme of things, I suppose nothing has been proven in any of those fields without a shadow of a doubt. Like there are sort of, things that you could say, I could pull information from anywhere and argue, well, this is proof. But at the end of the day, we don't have widely accepted peer-reviewed proof of any of these areas, which I suppose is what I would sort of mean in that kind of sense. But I collect a lot of the different experiences, and I try to look at it as many kind of peer-reviewed studies as I can in many different areas. And they can kind of be biased, I guess, in certain ways because they're more on the academic front. But I try to approach things from all different sides, because at the end of the day, who am I to say that, yes, something is real and something is not real? Because the answer is I don't know. I kind of believe that all these things are real personally, just based on my own experiences and experiences I've collected from people. But I suppose arguing the proof behind it is the other side of the coin, and that's where it becomes a lot harder. And I suppose it's probably more that proof that I am more looking for now within the studies and things like that. But I don't know if even if something came out, I don't know if anything would ever be widely accepted as this is 100% proof. Like there's always going to be people that say, well, no, that's not enough. So I don't, because all the fields are so, they're all run unregulated really. So there's no kind of governing body that is able to come out and say, yes, this is 100% proof that these things exist. And then would society accept it? And then the next question is society ready to accept that? Which I would argue that they're not.
Yeah, we have that same, we face that same process in the UFO field too. You know, there's a big call for disclosure, but, you know, are people ready for it? You know, like what would be the point then? Would you stir up a hornet's nest in people's psyches, or, you know, and create these vigilante groups, or would you, you know, how would it happen? You know, I guess with me, I'm thinking about like open disclosure, which is different to in the paranormal field, I think. Open disclosure about ghosts, well, I don't know if you could ever have that. I'm not really sure. Or
no, yeah,
so it's slightly different, but yeah, same sort of principle behind that, operating behind that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, with the owies, you need a living or dead carcass, don't you? You know, that's really what it takes. You know, like all the plaster casts under the sun and photos of tree pyramids and all that sort of stuff don't really cut it as evidence. And I'm more than happy to believe, like, not a problem in the world. But until you've actually got something, here he is, he's right here, or you can. And the other frustrating thing too is from the past, there's some brilliant photos that exist of apparent creatures of all sorts that have been found over the years, and of course there's nothing left now to say that they even found one in the past, you know. So.
And you have to wonder, with the way our technology is now, why can we not get a clear photo of any of these kind of phenomena? It's always grainy, blurry photos. We can never get like a clear-cut photo of something. And I suppose I look at it from two different ways. Is that one, maybe that it's not there to photograph, but also maybe we're not supposed to. Like maybe we're not supposed to, I guess, find all the answers, because it goes back to when you talk about, well, we're on this quest of finding out our beliefs and things like that. Maybe it's just a process that we have to go through before we get to the end, is that's just part of our journey. So maybe we're actually not supposed to find any of these answers.
Yeah. I don't think you can use photos as evidence anymore, because they're just so easily manipulated, and then very well manipulated too.
Absolutely, yeah, 100%.
A photo is really just, it's 1 second in time, and so it doesn't actually give you the full story. I mean, you can see a photo even when you look at like paparazzi and things like that. You can make a photo look the way that you're trying to sell it, and it actually doesn't tell the story of what is really happening.
Yeah. And even these deep fake videos that people are making now of all sorts of situations, not just in the paranormal, but, you know, like world leaders, for example, you know, they're saying, I don't trust anything that I see anymore. But I you know, I do listen to people's stories, always have. That's always been far more important to me. And you know, I carry around this mental box when people are telling me something, and as they say things, I go tick, tick, tick. Like this is a predictable sort of how could you say,
sort of like a classic experience.
Yeah, like a core, sort of has a core to it that comes, you know, even though experiences are quite widely different, there's a core structure that is in classic experiences that is repeated over and over and over again, even though the fine details might be quite different for each individual. So, I mean, that says something to me. It says, hey, pay attention, number one. And yeah, look, it could be from the human mind, because we're all humans. Our minds are wired very similarly. So, you know, there could be something that's manifesting from our minds in the same way, because we are all humans. But I don't know, my gut tells me there's something more to this, you know, something a bit different.
I think so. And there are researchers, even, you know, when we go back a couple of 100 years ago, and what I've been doing a lot lately is reading a lot of books that are over 100 years old from what they would call psychical researchers. And that's basically what they would do, is they would go and they would interview hundreds and hundreds of people, or they would have letters sent in. And it's like you said, they would kind of check all these boxes and say, these are all the different things that are happening that are the same. And from that, they would just kind of come up with all these different theories as to why is it that people are experiencing all the same thing. And they're people that don't know each other. They're people from other sides of the world. So there has to be some sort of reason as to what it is. And so they would just kind of write these books, include all the experiences, which are really fascinating to read. And then they would just sit there and go, well, it could be this, it could be this, or what if our minds are, they would call them like telepathic hallucinations, because you've got people that are seeing things, but other people aren't seeing them, but they're significant to them. And why is it happening to all these people? It's got to be something more than just, not everyone can have some sort of mental, block or something that's causing it. There's got to be some other reason to it.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. Interesting. Very interesting. Do you think a ghost is a person that once lived, Sarah?
I hate it when people ask me that. I don't want to say that, like, no, it's not, because also in some ways I feel like that's almost insensitive in a ways, but I do personally believe, and it goes back to like what Ben was saying more about like this Philip experiment. I think that we possibly create a lot more than necessarily like a spirit coming back and visiting us, because the way I sort of see it is they're moving on to, whether they're going to the universe or whatever we do or wherever we go, is they're off to something far better and greater than what we're doing like right now, and don't necessarily need to come back. I suppose some people would argue, that they need to, say goodbye or give loved ones messages and things like that. But I personally believe, and I guess more of what I've seen on people doing paranormal investigations and things, I think a lot more of it is created by us. So in that essence, I think it's still paranormal, but I don't necessarily think that it's always the spirit of someone that was once.
And, oh, sorry, Ben, go on.
Yeah, I mean, have you ever tried to go out? So when you're going into an airport and you try to go back out the way you came in, it's just impossible to do that at an airport. So in the afterlife, I'm sure it's just as tricky to come back, through that way, And I tend to believe that, yes, I don't think, like when you're dead, are you really going to hang around the old hospital where you died? In my opinion, I think that these are impressions that are left behind. These are not the actual souls of the people, or this is just an energy field that exists in a location. And that's just my thoughts on it. I can't see a spirit banging around in an old asylum, shutting doors and doing that just to scare some investigators. Like, it's got to be more to that.
And when you talk about that, it's just sort of that leftover energy. There's, and I kind of get excited when I talk about it a little bit, because it's a really fascinating area. It's like there's a thing that they call like psychic imprints, and it's where a lot of people kind of believe that a lot of, I guess, the popular locations that people do paranormal investigators on are actually just haunted by sort of the residual energy of the people that have been through there the week before and the week before that, and things like that. And so a lot of the things, and I've even had people that say that they're psychic mediums, and they pick up on that, and they'll say when they go through, a lot of what they're picking up on is just the energy of the people that have already been there, not necessarily people that have passed away.
Yeah, I mean, one should think that Auschwitz would be like a standing room only for ghosts, and Bergen-Belsen and those horrible torture camps from World War II, and I haven't really investigated whether there are ghosts at Auschwitz or not, but that's, if it was your spirit that was locked in a location, that would be a place where you would be locked. And presumably those spirits have moved on to bigger and better things after their unfortunate demises.
Well, you would hope so.
You'd hope so, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Oh, you two are such skeptics. I'm going to go the other way just to balance you two out and say that there are really high quality EVPs that exist. There has been well-documented instrumental transcommunication that has come through various electronic devices that has been documented. Really well-documented near-death experience cases where there is people have that veridical information they gain in the other realm, which they could not have known because it might have had something to do with before they were born in this life. UFOs that leave marks on the ground, right? And Ben, you know the Westall case.
Language, yeah.
You know the Westall case, and over 200 witnesses at the school. So there is, and that's just what we're talking about now. There's a whole host of other paranormal, strange, and I never know where to put UFOs and the paranormal, but
it's part of it. I mean, it's not normal.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true. But the lives of the people who have the experiences are entwined with the paranormal. So yeah, it is closely related. So, but there are really well documented cases about a lot of events. Even Fatima, for example, with 100,000 people. I can't remember exactly how many there were, but over in Portugal, where that the silver disc was seen in the sky. Actually, was it silver, Ben? I can't remember now. Was it? Anyway, it was called the something to do with the event of the sun, but it wasn't really the sun. And there'd been a downpour of rain, all these people, and they were dripping wet, and then this thing goes over and they're suddenly all dry. These are things they're the sort of things that really grab my attention and, keep me interested in these fields of research, because there's those really well-documented cases. I can't explain them.
Yeah, I would not disagree with that. All I'm trying to eliminate is the white noise around it. Like, that's what I want to eliminate, is just get rid of the stuff that is just nonsense, and I mean, and I mean that in many levels, like there's just a lot of nonsense around this. Yes, our universes are complex and amazing and incredibly intricate and intuitive, sort of a whatever reality is. So yes, I really do believe in all these possibilities, but it's just sort of getting through that journey across there is and I'm with you with all of those. I'm a fan.
Yeah.
Good save, Ben. Good save.
And I'm on board, but I like my evidence.
Yes, me too.
I like my evidence. I'm not esoteric really much in any way. I do like to see the facts.
Yeah, and look, I'm same as Ben. Like, I do believe in all these things. And if you say to me, do you believe in ghosts? And I'll say, yes, I believe in ghosts, but I don't know what they are.
Yeah.
And that would be my answer. And that's what I guess a lot of my research is. And do I believe in UFOs? Yes, I do. Do I believe in cryptids? Yes, I do. But I don't know what any of it is. I don't know what causes it. And that's what I'm happy to look at. But I guess it's like when we were going back before with a lot of the things on social media and all that stuff, a lot of the paranormal field has become so sort of commercialized that, like you said, it's sifting through all that white noise and trying to find that real genuine things that happen. And I suppose the other side of things is all of the really good experiences seem to happen to people that aren't looking for it. It's just,
exactly.
It's happening to them, in the middle of the day when they're not expecting it. So whereas we're going out looking for it, and yeah.
My favorite
never really find it.
Exactly.
My favorite witnesses are the ones that I chase down and stalk to find where they are. And then if they agree to talk to me, that's the witness I like.
Yeah.
They're the ones I want. The ones who aren't out there, the quiet voices, if you like.
Yeah. And they are out there.
They are, though. They sure are. Yeah, 100%. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot more than we actually realize, because I think the paranormal, as Damien Knott would say, is really the paranatural.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that people who don't have these unusual experiences from time to time somehow unconsciously work really hard not to have them, expend a lot of energy to suppress that in their life somehow. Because my experience is, and the many people that I've spoken to over the years, is it comes up in the lives of a lot of people, but they just cast it off as just one of those things,
Yeah.
That's just
I'm jealous.
All the
what can I say?
All the farmers out there who just go work hard every day just to make their farms viable, and they have incredible experiences.
Yeah.
That's it just blows me away.
Yeah, it's so true.
And they're not looking for any glory,
Yeah. Well, guess what? That hour went really fast.
Oh,
Yeah, I know.
Always does.
Yeah, I know. We just start to really dig in. But anyway, we'll
know.
have you back again, Sarah.
I will definitely
Yes.
come back.
Sarah.
And yeah, it's been great for you to have you join us. Really appreciate it. And we both really appreciate your eclectic background and depth of knowledge, and that you're still learning like all of us.
Always.
Yes, always. That's for sure. There's so many other things I'd like to talk to you about, but we'll have to have you back again soon.
We will. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome. Do you want to hold up your book and give it a plug?
Yep.
So that's volume 1, and then I have volume 2.
Oh, okay.
So volume 1 is more like the psychology side that we discussed, and then volume 2 is more like the parapsychology side. So it goes into like what we talked about with like telepathy, near-death experiences, and all that kind of stuff. So more volume 1 talks about like all the things that our mind can trick us into thinking is paranormal, and then volume 2 looks at, well, what if it is our mind actually projecting these things as paranormal? So it covers like the Philip experiment that we've discussed today, and things like that, and near-death experiences. So it's sort of saying, well, is our mind capable of producing something paranormal, or us even experiencing something paranormal? So it kind of, I try to be balanced.
How do we order them? Where can we get them?
Yeah.
So you can get them. They're available on Amazon, and they're also available from my website, which is llifs.com.au, and I blog there like a lot as well. So you can read all my musings and thoughts and all different things about the paranormal there.
Okay, well, we'll put a link under this on YouTube so people can find you.
Oh, thank you.
Well, yeah, you're welcome. Well, that's it, guys. Thanks so much for coming together with the three of us, I suppose. And we look forward to. Oh, by the way, if anyone watching, if you enjoyed this, please give it a like, and remember to subscribe to the channel. Tap the bell to make sure you get your notifications of when we post things on the channel. And also remember, we've got a Facebook page too, so come and see us over there as well. So until next time, take care, everyone, and bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.